Hello, my name is Michael Beckwith, and this is my response to the proposition rebuttal. Now, in her rebuttal speech, my opponent never brings up the counterplan I brought up in my constructive. This counterplan would call for private foundations to fund housing vouchers for low-income minority families that have been the victims of legacies of the jury segregation and slavery. Now, these foundations could be such as the National Fair Housing Alliance, the American Association for Affirmative Action, or members of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights. Now, these should be funded by such private foundations not only because they have a vested interest, but also because the government is not liable for the institution of slavery and has been proven to be irresponsible when dealing with housing segregation. The government was found responsible for housing discrimination suits in Gautreaux v. Romney 1971, Clients Council v. Pierce 1985, and Young v. Pierce 1985, where the Department of Housing and Urban Development was found liable for redlining and other zoning requirements that reproduced residential segregation. Now, my opponent brings up Peter Singer's thought experiment on the drowning person in the pond as a way to show the government is liable for slavery. However, I would argue, as I did in my constructive, that it is not as if the government watched a person drowning in a pond and they were the only ones around. Rather, it is as if the government watched someone get shot. Now, this does not clear the government of any fault, as my opponent has mischaracterized my argument in her rebuttal. Rather, this means the government is not at fault for slavery in the same way that the silent bystander is not responsible for the death of the person. The government does have some moral responsibility, in fact, in the terms that it was silent. However, it is not directly liable for the institution of slavery in the same way the bystander is not directly liable for the murder of a person. Now, my opponent also says that my claim that her plan is not unique is wrong. However, I would argue that affirmative action, which was signed into law by President Kennedy with Executive Order 10925 on March 6, 1961, according to the United States Equal Opportunity Commission, does constitute the type of in-kind educational opportunity reparations that she has proposed. Not only this, she also mentions that we could give paper money or liquid currency as a form of reparations. My question is, where is this money coming from? Now, she further mischaracterizes my arguments by saying that I have proposed that what happened on the plantations was in no means a violation of human dignity or human rights, and saying that the slaves were fed, they did the work, but they also had a place to sleep, they were given a house. Never in my constructive did I say that slavery was not a reprehensible and morally unjustifiable institution, and never did I say that the human rights abuses that took place on the individual plantations are by no means serious or significant in any way. Rather, I say it is simply that the government is not liable for the crimes that took place on these plantations, but rather the slave owners and their descendants. Now, she proposes that we could find descendants of slaves using DNA testing the same way that we have done with Native Americans. However, Native American DNA testing takes the form of just proving that you have some type of Native American ancestry. Proving that you have some type of African ancestry in no way proves that you are in fact a descendant of the slave. Not only this, but DNA testing in the same way that liquid currency reparations would cost a lot of money. And not only this, how would you get people to participate in a program with a public that is increasingly mistrustful of the government since the institutions of the practices by the NSA of illegal wiretapping and going through emails? I find it very difficult to believe that people would step forward and offer up their DNA for a government agency to inspect. Not only this, but as I said previously, she never addressed my counterplan, and for that reason, the fact that not only is her plan equivalent to the status quo, but that my counterplan's benefits would outweigh the benefits of in-kind educational opportunity reparations or liquid currency reparations, shows that I should win this debate for those reasons. Thank you to my opponent and the judge for participating, and the judge for being present and going over the material, and that is all.